Ever stood in front of a bar menu, staring at the words whiskey, scotch, and bourbon, and just thought, bro, aren't these all just fancy names for the same drink? You're not alone. That little confusion spiral is exactly where this story gets juicy. It's a question that trips up so many people, even folks who've been enjoying these drinks for years. It's like looking at three siblings who kinda look alike, but have totally different personalities. And today, we're gonna get to the bottom of this family drama. We're going to unpack what makes each one unique, why they taste so different. And by the end of this, you'll be ordering your next drink like a total pro. So grab a glass, get comfortable, and let's dive into the world of whiskey. Alright, let's start with the big picture. Think of whiskey as the family surname. It's the broad category that covers a whole range of spirits. If whiskey is the whole squad, then scotch and bourbon are two of its star players. They're both types of whiskey, but they have their own strict rules and origins that set them apart. This is the first and most important thing to get straight. All scotch is whiskey, and all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is scotch or bourbon. It's like how all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. You feel me? This simple fact is the key to unlocking the whole puzzle. So, when someone offers you a whiskey, they could be talking about anything from an Irish single malt to a Japanese blend, a Canadian rye, or, you guessed it, a scotch or a bourbon. It's the big umbrella term for a spirit distilled from fermented grain, mashed like wheat, rye, barley, or corn end, then aged in wooden barrels. Simple enough, right? Now, let's get into the specifics and meet the individual members of this famous family. First up, let's talk about the old-school legend from across the pond, Scotch. When you think of Scotch, you might picture foggy Scottish highlands, ancient castles, and dudes in kilts. And honestly, you're not far off. Scotch has to be made in Scotland. That's rule number one, no exceptions. It's protected by law, so if it's not made in Scotland, it legally cannot be called Scotch. It's typically made from malted barley, though other grains can be used too. The barley is often dried over a peat fire, which is where that classic smoky, earthy flavor that many Scotches are famous for comes from. That peat is basically decomposed plant matter that's been compressed over thousands of years. And when it burns, it releases this intense aromatic smoke that infuses the barley. After distillation, Scotch must be aged in oak casks for at least 3 years. Again, this is the law. Many are aged for much longer, 10, 12, 18 years or more, and that time in the barrel is where a lot of the magic happens, developing complexity and smoothness. So, when you're sipping a scotch, you're tasting a piece of Scottish history and geography. It's a drink with a deep heritage, a strong sense of place, and a flavor profile that can range from light and floral to rich, powerful, and intensely smoky. Now, let's hop back across the Atlantic to meet America's hometown hero, bourbon. If Scotch is the mysterious older relative with a thick accent, bourbon is the charismatic, confident cousin from the South. Bourbon is a uniquely American spirit, and just like Scotch, it has its own set of legal requirements. To be called bourbon, it has to be made in the United States. While most people associate it with Kentucky, and it's true, about 95% of all bourbon is made there. Can technically be produced anywhere in the US. The mash bill, which is the recipe of grains used, must be at least 51% corn. This high corn content is what gives bourbon its characteristic sweetness. Think notes of caramel, vanilla, and toffee. That's the corn talking. The other grains, usually rye or wheat, add spice or softness to the final flavor. And here's a really important rule. Bourbon must be aged in brand new, charred oak barrels. They can't reuse barrels. This is a huge deal. That fresh char on the inside of the barrel is what gives bourbon its deep amber color and a ton of its flavor. As the whiskey ages, it soaks in and out of the wood, pulling out all those sweet, toasty notes from the charred oak. It's a process that screams Southern charm, bold, warm, and a little bit sweet. So, we've established that Scotch and bourbon are both whiskeys, but they come from different places and follow different recipes. Let's really break down those differences. Side by side, geographically, it's Scotland versus the USA. That's a clear line in the sand. Then there's the main ingredient. For Scotch, it's primarily malted barley. For bourbon, it's at least 51% corn. This is the foundation of their flavor difference. The corn makes bourbon inherently sweeter, while the barley in Scotch lends itself to a wider, more earthy or grainy spectrum of flavors. And let's not forget the peat, that smoky flavor you find in many Scotches, is a total non-starter in the bourbon world. It's a signature Scottish move. Then we have the barrels, the aging process. This is a game changer. Scotch can be aged in used barrels. In fact, many Scottish distilleries love to use barrels that previously held American bourbon or Spanish sherry, because those barrels add their own unique character and complexity to the Scotch. Bourbon, on the other hand, demands brand new charred oak barrels every single time. This means bourbon gets a very strong, direct influence from the woodlots of vanilla, caramel, and spice. Scotch's flavor is often a more layered conversation between the spirit, the barrel's current life, and its past life. It's like one gets a brand new car every time, and the other prefers a classic vintage model with its own story to tell. These rules aren't just for fun. They fundamentally define the spirit in your glass. But wait, the whiskey family is bigger than just Scotch and bourbon. There are other cool relatives we should mention. Take Irish whiskey, for example. It's known for being incredibly smooth, often because it's triple distilled, which is one more distillation than most Scotches and bourbons go through. It's typically not peated, so you get a lighter, more approachable flavor. Then you have Canadian whiskey, spelled without the E, by the way. It's often a blend and is known for its lightness and fruitiness, with rye being a prominent flavor component. And we can't forget about Japanese whiskey. The Japanese were inspired by Scotch and started making their own with meticulous attention to detail. They've become absolute masters of the craft, winning awards left and right for their incredibly balanced and elegant whiskeys. Each of these brings its own swagger to the party. It's just like accents. They're all speaking the same language of whiskey, but they each have their own totally different flavor and style. Exploring these other types of whiskey is a whole other adventure in itself, showing you just how diverse and exciting this spirit category can be. So, let's talk about what this all means for your taste buds. When you pour a glass of bourbon, you can generally expect a certain vibe. It's going to be on the sweeter side of the spectrum. You'll likely pick up on those cozy sweet notes of caramel, honey, and vanilla, with a bit of spice from the charred oak. It feels warm, rich, and comforting, like a dessert in a glass. Now compare that to Scotch. Scotch is a whole different ballgame because the flavor profile is so much broader. You could have a light, grassy, and floral Speyside Scotch, or you could have a heavily peated Islay Scotch that tastes like a smoky bonfire by the sea. It can be bold, it can be delicate, it can be fruity, it can be briny. The grains and the cask, along with that optional peat, are the secret sauce of the whole flavor show. So, while you can generalize that bourbon is sweet, you can't really generalize the taste of Scotch. You have to ask, what kind of Scotch is it? The region it comes from, like Islay Speyside, or the Highlands, tells you a lot about what to expect. Here's a fun little brain twister that catches people all the time, and it perfectly sums everything up. All bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon. The same goes for Scotch. All Scotch is whiskey, but not all whiskey is Scotch. Think about that for a second. It means whiskey is the parent category. Bourbon and Scotch are specific types of whiskey that have to follow a strict set of rules to earn their names. So if you create a spirit in Japan using corn and new charred oak barrels, you can't call it bourbon because it wasn't made in the US. You'd have to call it a corn whiskey or simply a Japanese whiskey. If you make a barley-based spirit in America that's aged for 3 years, you can't call it Scotch. It's an American single malt whiskey. This concept of appellation, or protected origins, what keeps these traditions alive and ensures that when you order a Scotch or a bourbon, you're getting a product with a guaranteed heritage and production method. So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? The next time you're re-looking at a drink menu or walking down the aisle at the liquor store, you won't feel that sense of confusion. You'll see whiskey, Scotch, and bourbon, and you'll know exactly what those words mean. You'll know that bourbon is your go-to if you're in the mood for something sweet, rich, and caramelly. You'll know to look for a Scotch if you want something with a bit more complexity, maybe something smoky and intense, or maybe something light and elegant. You'll understand that whiskey is just the starting point of a global adventure in flavor. You'll be able to confidently ask the bartender, what kind of bourbons do you have? Or is your Scotch peated? You'll never look at a drink menu the same way again. You'll know exactly which bottle is calling your name, and more importantly, you'll know why it tastes the way it does. It's all about knowing the story in the bottle. Thanks for hanging out and geeking out on whiskey with me today. Hopefully, this cleared things up and got you excited to explore. There's a whole world of flavor out there waiting for you. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, do me a solid and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the things we eat and drink. Cheers, and see you in the next one.